Hello everyone, and I hope that you're well. So this is a breakdown of the Euro USD scalp trade that I took this morning. So let's start off with how I began my day. So I started looking at the charts. I think it was around 7 o'clock, and I remember seeing this bearish move. Now, before I started this trade, you have to remember of what price is actually doing. Now, I already knew that price is currently reacting off the daily POI. So if there was a bearish move, I will know that I can hold it out as a swing potentially. Obviously, it's not guaranteed to fully play out to that daily low as we expect, but the idea is I have a bigger potential to have a short swing as opposed to a long swing, for example. Obviously, I was aware of the 4 hour POI that was marked from last week as well. So the reason why the 4 hour POI is important is because I have a potential target place that I can take my partials and then monitor price. And that's exactly what I did as well, which I'll explain going forward. But the whole idea of understanding where price is already coming from, it gives me the idea that I know once I've taken my partials I know that I could potentially hold that position to take out the daily low as we expect from our daily POI reaction, right? So coming into this morning, then, so what we see was this. So I first saw this breaker structure. Now, as you know, this is pre-London. I do tend to look pre-London as well. The thing is, if you look at the Frankfurt session, which is just before London, sometimes you get false moves. I don't like using the word false moves really, but sometimes you get moves that sort of go range from range, but they don't really impulse out. And then on other times, you get a huge impulse that come from Frankfurt, and London doesn't show anything. London does show higher potential. In terms of not higher potential, higher probability in terms of catching obviously the impulse of the session, which makes sense because it's London. But for me, purely because I'm awake, I like to look at the charts and see what's happening. And the sooner I can get on a trade, the happier I am to just get off, get off the charts and get on with my day really. So um, that's just my thinking. I know James waits for 8 o'clock exactly and then carries on from there. But yeah, I like to look at the charts when I pretty much am fully awake and alert. So I saw this bearish move initially, and I thought, okay, this could be a potential for a short. So I went to the 5 second time frame as I normally would. I think what before I go on, I think what people often forget is, and I've spoken about the trade models even in phase four, but my entry system is exactly the same. I like to trade off um, the first break of structure, and which gives you intent. I like to trade off that first POI, and then I'd have my confirmation. Okay, just say that's your confirmation entry. My only variable would be if I'm going to incept to the first entry or the second entry. That's the only variable I have. Um, the reason why I have this is because this is a whole idea of having a trading model and a trading plan, and it allows me to only look for that one thing. Um, and it doesn't mean that you have to copy this exact model because it may not work for you, because it has to come from your own understanding and logic. Even though the understanding should in theory be the same, your interpretation will be slightly different, right? That's just how it naturally is. I mean, James doesn't use this model at all. It's a bit different. So naturally, you'll find something that works for you over time. For me, this is what I found as my winning model, I would call it. And yeah, as reiterated in phase four in the trading model and plan video, this is essentially all I look for. And it's the same entry whether I'm doing a scalp or whether I'm doing a swing or intraday, my entry model stays the same. And what this means is I'm coming into the market already knowing how I'm going to execute. It's just a matter of when and where and how I'm going to do it in terms of incepting here. That's, as I said, that's the only variable that I have, um, where you have that element of discretion. But even then, it's still rule based to an extent. It's just a decision of whether I want to incept here or incept here. It's that's sort of like a gut instinct of what to do at that moment, because especially on the seconds time frame, you don't really have a lot of time to ponder about and think. You just have to get on with it. But that's my model. Uh, so let's get back on to this. So once the price came into here, I was on the 5 second time frame immediately, and what we can see was this. There we go. So we have the 5 second high, all right, and let's mark out the 5 second low. The 5 second low was all the way down here. And then we had the break of structure from this POI here. So I knew that I'm potentially going to incept here. So I attempted to incept. So this was the 5 second intent, and then I incepted that. But all that price did, so initially we had, let me use this. Initially we had this high. Sorry, you know what? It's just easier using your box, isn't it? Initially we had this high, and then we had this low that needs to be broken. We had rule number one, but then price came and crashing through, so it didn't really give me an entry. Otherwise, I would have taken that, and then price went flying through. When price went back into that POI, I did monitor it, but it didn't really give an entry. If you follow it, price just carried on going up. It just carried on going bullish. Now, as price continued going bullish, what we had was this bullish break, and what this gave me was another POI to look for a long position here. So as this high was forming, so the high was created here, right? I knew that I have a long position from anywhere within here if price gets in there, right? So now we have bullish intent. Let me play this out until price gets in there, and then I'll go back to this. So as price came and tapped in, obviously we didn't see this at the time. As price came and tapped in, price just went flying through, and it didn't give an entry as such, so it invalidated the structure. And now what we have is bearish intent. The thing is, when price is breaking bearish and bullish continuously, all we just know we're entering a high time frame range. So that impulse is coming. We just have to wait for that break of this range to happen and that commitment. At the moment, there's no commitment at all to any form of mitigation at all. There was some small attempt of mitigation here, but it didn't follow through. It just came crashing. But as this happened, obviously we've got that bearish POI now. But this is the interesting, well, not interesting part. What we had was, sorry, I did it too quickly there. What we had was price came to this POI, but again, it didn't give an entry and it just went crashing through there. So there's nothing for me to look for at that point. Now, sometimes I do look for an entry to see if there's anything coming through, if price comes snapping back. But because it broke on that 1 minute time frame and we're coming close to London, we're pretty much entering London at this point, we had this bullish break of structure. So I need to be more aware of this. Now, if there was a short entry, I would sell it down to this POI to potentially take a long if anything presented, but I didn't take that short. There's no reason why, it's just a personal preference. Once price came into this, so this almost gave me an entry. I'll show you. So you could probably still see my squiggles. Now, let me play this out a little bit more. So as price came into here, right, where was it? Yeah, it was here. It was that reaction. Sorry, that my drawing doesn't show it. But I didn't get anything at that point. There was nothing for me to take that trade. But what this gave me was now we had bearish intent. So we went from bearish intent, small reaction, no follow through. Then we had bullish intent, break of structure. Then we had bearish intent, then bullish intent, and now we have bearish intent. Now, key in detail is that this is obviously the OB that went on to break the structure. Let me get rid of this, 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 and this, and that, just to make our charts a little bit cleaner. So now we have this breaker structure. Where did it come from? What we can see is this point here. We had this high being created, so this is not relevant for us, especially if you come from a different course. Not using this part, because this can be seen as the extreme, but for us it doesn't fit our structure rules. The thing is, if you're coming from a different course, you need to let go if you're going to commit to vertex fully, because you can't really mix and match the rules as such, purely because the vertex strategy is designed around our specific rules. We don't use this. If you want to try and create this as your extreme, you're going to have to go to a different time frame for it to make sense. I personally do not need to do that, because I have trust in my process. I have trust in the rules. Now we have our POI, and now we've actually entered London. So I'm hoping that we would, at this point, that we would have some sort of reaction. So at this point, I'm an hour into my session, and yeah, I've taken nothing. Now what we have is, when price comes back in, we have this small reaction, and this is where it was a little bit questionable, I think, for some of you. So at this point, what we have is, we have the 5-second high, and we have the 5-second low, which eventually gets broken here by this OB here, and then we have another break. So at this point, we have another breaker structure, and now we're going to trade the reaction of either this one or this one. So this is what I was talking about in terms of the model. So we have our confirmation, we have our two rules. The question is, where are you going to incept? So I'm going to incept on either one of the two, depending on what happens. What I need to mark out actually for you guys so you can see it is, this was the 5-second low that was created, right? Now, if you look at the 1-second reaction, so the 1-second high is there at the moment, 1-second low is here. If we follow it through, we only break this structural low here, right? And this structure break came from any point between these two candles that led to this break. The next thing that happens is questionable, because this goes on to break this structure. Now, if we go to the 5-second, this invalidates our two rules, and it goes to the third breaker structure, which means, in theory, we should be going up the time frame. So what it's done is invalidated setup. So there's no inception entry there, because it invalidated our whole higher time frame confirmation there, right? Higher time frame being that 5-second confirmation. So I went to the 15-second structure, and what we 15-second time frame, sorry. And what we see is the 15-second high, 15-second low, somewhere down here, I believe. I didn't even pay attention. Yeah, somewhere down here. There it is. Now, what we need to watch is just what happens with price. Now, because price went crashing through, and what it's done is, using those two rules and using that rule of invalidation, it's avoided that loss that we potentially could have taken, right? Because some of you probably have taken that loss, but because you didn't pay attention to that structure, it's completely normal, it's fine. Because it did that, I went back to the 5-second time frame, because the 15-second time frame at this point is irrelevant, and the 5-second time frame resets. So if I let price play on, nothing really happened in between there. What we can see is, we have this 5-second high, 5-second low. We have this breaker structure, which creates this this low here. All right, so now we have 5-second intent. So I wait for a reaction to happen at this point. Now, if we go to the 1-second time frame, once price taps in, so initially we have this 1-second intent. So we have 1-second intent from this high, and we have obviously this low. Then we have this breaker structure, which creates this low. That could have been an entry point, but for me, because I'm trading the 5-second intent, I want the 1-second two rules, which doesn't happen. But what happens is, we create a new high. We have this new high here, so I can move this across to here, and we have this. Oh, why can't I grab it? There you go. Oh, no. There you go. And we have that low there, which created that high, and we have this breaker structure. Key detail that happened here is, we already have our 1-second two rules. I've only noticed a few of you have noticed it, and I didn't point it out for a reason. But what we have is this: the low was formed from the intent from here. Then we have a high. Then we form the low. So we have the two rules. Now, for me, there's no way I'm going to enter on that purely because I don't feel confident on that. That's just a gut instinct. I don't like that myself, and I wouldn't have placed an entry there. If it reacted there, then fair enough. It had full valid reason to do so, but for me, it doesn't make sense. This makes more sense. Purely, it grabbed liquidity, and we did have that impulsive move. I placed my entry at the open. I had about, I don't know, about 10-15 seconds, I believe, to place this order. And once it broke, that's when I placed it. To be fair, I don't know when it started. Hold on. So we ended up triggering. So how long did I have? Because a lot of you question if you have enough time. So this one I actually did put a limit order, and it triggered within 18 seconds. Plenty of time to place that order. Once it was placed, I obviously entered, and I was happy, and that's my London session complete. I ended up taking a 5R when it hit 10R, when it hit 10 pips, which is my usual. Obviously, it was only 10R. It was only 5R because this was a 1 pip stop loss, which I'm obviously very, very happy with. And then my key was what I'm going to do now. So as we know, we have that 4-hour POI. So I had that marked up. All I had to do was wait and see what price did when price got there. So the interesting part was this: when we had, hold on a sec, has that moved? Because I feel like it tapped sooner, maybe it didn't. What we had was once price came into it, once price came and tapped into it, we had that intent, and then we had the next break, and that's when I take further partials off. So I took about 10R off, just to pay myself and secure something from that trade, because bear in mind, that move already was about 39 or 40R, something like that. Yeah, about 40R. So taking 5R from that move and letting the rest hit break even didn't sit too comfortably with me, purely because this reaction does make sense and it does hold value. So I took off partials there, and I didn't really monitor price from after that. And the way I did this is normally I don't really sit and watch. I normally set an alert. So I set an alert at that 4-hour POI. Once price tapped, I just monitored price there. So I wasn't even looking at the chart between my break even point, which is after a couple minutes, until the alert came off. So about 2 hours or so. So once that happened, and once I saw the two rules, I decided to close that partial. Actually, there wasn't two rules; it's just the intent. Yeah, it was just the intent. Once I did that, I took the partials off and I left the rest to run. And then obviously we had that valid reaction in New York, and this was a wonderful move. Obviously news driven. I don't think I would have got an entry at any point. I wasn't even looking for an entry, but there was a 30-second structure point here, which led to that reaction going forward. And then this reaction, it did make sense. It was still carrying the bearish move, because this was the 1-hour POI and it was a valid reaction. As we can see, price continuing. Bit of a shame, but I didn't look to enter. I was happy with the 15R, and that's when you have to know, you have to know what you're comfortable with. And I think many of us look for those big numbers and don't really appreciate, the 5Rs, the 10Rs here and there. That, the skill that we have is incredible, but we just need to show appreciation to it, because these wins, even though this was a 40R move, obviously I only took 15R from this, but am I upset? No. If I make anything substantial, I'm happy, and anything more than 2R, I'm happy with. 5R was great on that partial, then 10R partial was even better, and I was happy. So whatever happened, my day was over within an hour's worth of work, I would say, and then a couple minutes taking off that partial when price tapped. That was it. I was finished. I didn't bother looking for the rest of the day because I don't have to. And that's what we have to sort of understand, is we're investors. We're not gamblers, right? You want to treat this in a conservative yet aggressive manner. We have to make sure any risk that we take has to be with full logic and understanding, right? Because imagine if you had, say, what, 100 mil account, you aren't gonna. Some of you are treating your accounts as if, obviously, because it's a small account for some of you, you trade it very aggressively because you're looking for that quick big return. For example, I'm just generalizing, by the way. I'm not singling anyone out, but if you had a bigger account, which is what's happened to me, once you get a bigger account, you won't want to risk that much because you'll realize the monetary loss, regardless of the percentage that you're risking. I mean, I'm only risking 0.25% across both my accounts because that's what I'm comfortable losing. It's got nothing to do with confidence as such. It's just more, I don't want to lose. Hold on a sec, my foot's stuck. Sorry. I don't want to lose any more than I'm comfortable with. I still have that psychological barrier, and I'm sure. Well, I'm sure a lot of you would be in the same position in terms of your risk when you understand how much you're risking. But that's the main thing that I want to say is the reason why I love the Scout model is purely because I can finish off in London and I'll be happy. That's my day complete. And I don't need to focus on New York because I've already exposed my account once. I don't want to expose it any further. I've taken what I want to, and that was it. And obviously there was a small loss. I thought I got my stop loss correct, but there was a small loss on the charge when this came to break even. It was a couple of hundreds or so, but nothing major. But that was the breakdown for EU. I hope this was insightful. I know it's been a while since I've done a video, but yeah, I hope you enjoy this one, and yeah, I'll see you on the next video.